and we have Thomas to help us out, which I'm super excited about that because he's the guru, and we both got haircuts and we're ready to roll.
We're prepared. Okay, should we dive in? Is everyone ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, hi, everyone that's joining us. Like I said just a moment ago, please send in questions if you have questions, because there's a few little gotchas with the table. I don't think it's overwhelmingly complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it unlocks huge possibilities. I will just go straight to it and let Thomas, because I believe we're going to start with Thomas sharing his screen, and dive right in.
Okay, do I share the right screen, or is it, you should see this singular dashboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, looks good.
So, my friends, we prepared a simple composition for this webinar. And the composition is called the lookup table composition. And we'll share this composition then after the webinar. I'm going
to actually drop that link in right now, just so everyone has
cool.
it, so we don't forget. But it is a template in the template library. It's free to download. So once we're done, then you'll understand why it's built the way it's built, why the script looks the way it looks, because Thomas is going to expertly let us know.
Yeah, so this composition, it has one sub-composition. We added a rectangle at the root. If you use it in production, you just hide it or remove that. But here, it lets us better see what the lower third looks like. When we jump into it, there are a few graphical elements, like this little corner edge. There is an image with an image URL. There are some text widgets. One of these text widgets is linked to this control node down here. So when I update it, the title updates as it should be. We have a text. Let me turn on the bounding box so we can see that. We have a drop line text, and then there is this one rectangle that has the color on the back. And when I change this color, then of course the entire color on the background also changes. So what we want to do today is we want to work with lookups, and we thought it might be a good idea to create a lookup table for countries, which include flags, colors, short names, long names, and play with that. So if you have a lookup table, which includes multiple elements, then you also need something to select a specific element from that lookup table. So the easiest way to do that is, of course, it could be a text widget where you type in, but to avoid typos, we always recommend using selections. I call this selection country, because that's what we're going to select here. And the country selection, it defines the selections with an ID and with a title. The title is what you see here, and the ID is what gets mapped to a widget property. Now let's do that with this line here. Just take it, link it to the country node, and then when I change the selection here, what we see and what's assigned to this widget property is the ID. So knowing that, we can take it one step further, and instead of linking it to the text, we won't link it to the image. But of course, then what we need is we need to define the URL to the image here as an ID. The way to do this is quite easy. Therefore, I prepared a Google Sheet table, very simple one, with the country and the flag, and number of URLs that point to the flags of these 4 countries, which we defined here. You can extend that as you like. So now, converting this table into the JSON structure as we need it here within the selection is quite easy. I'll do that using an extension that's called export sheets data. This export sheets data opens in a side panel, and you can download it and add it to your Google Sheets add-on from the Google Workspace Marketplace. So we can copy and paste the URL here, because that's a really powerful add-on which helps you creating lookup tables and exporting Google Sheets in a JSON structure. So what I'll do here is I'll just select that we just want to export the data from the current sheet, and this one is called selection. And I'll just click the visualize button. The visualize button here opens up a new window and explains and shows how the export looks like. And what it does, well, it's not exactly what we need. There is Argentina, England, Brazil, the countries are here, but the format is slightly different. So we can adapt that by just exporting this table with as a sheets array. When I now export it again,
and did you hit the visualize button there?
It's pretty close to that what we want.
Okay. Did you hit the visualize button, Thomas, or was that that?
Yes, I'll do that with the visualize button so we can see it, and then we just copy and paste it from here.
Okay,
so
great.
This format here is almost that one what we need here within the selection box. The only difference is the name of the fields. We have the ID for the ID that which gets mapped to our image URL, and the title. Well, that's easy to modify. So instead of country, I'll use the title. Instead of flag, I say that's my ID. And then I'll just click the visualize button again. Okay. And we have the proper format: title, Argentina, ID, the path to the flag for Argentina. Then I copy this part here and just paste it into the selection definition, save it, there we go.
So obviously you don't need to necessarily use that. It's a helpful tool, that add-on, but what you can do instead is just swap out the contents of what's there by default if you prefer doing that, and then just adding extra lines. That's typically what I do, but this is really helpful when you're working with very long JSON, which these guys are, Stephen, or all three of these guys, Suzanne included.
Okay, so what I then need to do is just link the image property to the country. And now when I just select the new country, it links and assigns the image property to the URL. You also can see that here within the payload structure. So depending on the country I select, the payload here changes. Now that's the flag India. When I just select Argentina, you see that this is the flag of Argentina URL. Okay, so that's already pretty good progress which we made, but we want to take it one step further. And I'll unlink this URL again. What we want to do is we want to use more information and map properties to multiple widgets, to the text. We want to update colors of the rectangle, the background, and of course also the logo URL by selecting just one item here within the selection box. So what do I need to do therefore? Well, we need to do some scripting. And before we start scripting, we prepare this selection setup a little bit different. I'll use the ID now with the same value as the title, and it needs to be unique. All IDs needs to be unique. If they are not unique, the UI will give you an error message down there, and it says that all the entries which you define here have to be unique. And it's the ID that needs to be unique. You can have multiple titles with the same name, but of course it doesn't make sense. The IDs, they have to be unique. So
and they just have to be unique as compared to another ID. Like it could be that, as Thomas just did there, it can be the same ID as the title itself, but it has to be different than other IDs, which you'll kind of encounter as you see errors and then correct things.
Okay, so now let's, we've prepared our selection box and we'll add some scripting. I'll open the composition script editor, and we'll see there are no scripts yet defined, and we'll define the composition script for the lower. A good way to start is always just loading the boilerplate. What I'll usually do is then I'll remove all the comments, keep the script very short. So what parts does a script usually have? I'll just copy and paste some comments there that are helpful to structure the way how you organize your script and how you start the script. So the first thing what you need is, of course, you need references to the compositions and to the widgets which you want to modify. Then define some constants. This would be the part where we define our lookup table. Then we can define some custom functions which we may need or may not, depending on the functionality which is defined. Define some callbacks. Callbacks are triggered when you change, for example, something in the payload, or you want to react to a timeline event or data being sent from the outside world. And last but not least, that's a quite important part, it's the initialization, because you want to make sure that when you load the output the first time, that it shows the proper data. Or when you refresh the output window for the first time, it shows the proper data, and therefore the initialization is quite important. Okay, so we'll start with defining references to our widget in this case. Let's have a look at the developer portal and the composition scripting sections, where within the quick start, we have we added some examples that show how to access subcompositions and how to get references to subcomposition objects, or look a little bit further down, how you get references to widgets. And that's exactly what we do. I just copy this one here and paste it here. Perfect. But now what I need to take care for is the proper widget names which are here. So I'll call that's my widget, and reference to the text widget, and that's called text. The composition object is returned by the init function. And with that composition object, you'll get access to all elements that are defined within that composition. I think this was down there. Okay, so we'll add some more widget definitions, and what I'll do is I just copy and paste this definition, so you don't need to see me typing that.
Thomas, do you mind? Sorry, really quickly. Do you mind just zooming into your browser just a bit?
Okay, I can.
And while he's doing that, just a reminder that if you don't have scripting experience, that's okay. As we said, we have a template that covers all of this. So, worst case scenario, you can just swap out the contents. That's kind of how I started to learn scripting too. So it shouldn't be too difficult to modify it for your own needs. Sorry, go ahead, Thomas.
Okay. Can you see and read the script good enough?
Yep.
Okay, good. So this gives us the reference to the widgets. And next thing what we want to do is, we want to define the lookup table. That's the, we call it, it's the country lookup table. Country lookup table. And how do we define that? There are various ways, various formats. Some prefer to define lookup tables as an array. Others prefer to define lookup tables as an object. So we'll go for the object variant, which simplifies a little bit the access to each property. Let's go back to our Google Sheet and have a look at the second table which I've prepared there, which is the country lookup table. And the country lookup table, it has a name, a short name for each of the countries defined. Then there is text, hello from Argentina, Brazil, India. And we have a text color and a background and the flag. So those are the properties which we are going to assign to our widgets. So the text will go here where we have the ID. The flag will update the image. The text color and the background will update the header text color, which is on the top. And the background color will update here this Asian rectangle color. Now again, we'll go to the export sheets data. What I'll do here is I don't need to export it as an array because I want to have, let's say, a simple object. So I deactivate this checkbox and let's have a look how this now looks like. And that's actually pretty good. So this JSON structure allows me to access the data from Argentina using Argentina as a key, and then further go down to the short name, text color, background, and flag. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. Let's take this one and just copy and paste it here into the script. Then I'll use this beautifier button and just save it. Well, that's actually pretty good already. And this Argentina, England, Brazil, India keys, they should match the definitions which we have here. There's one thing I want to show you is actually two things. One is the payload. This is the same display as you have it in the composition. So when you select or change the content here, then you'll see it updating there. There is another one which is quite helpful, especially when scripting. It's the model view. The model view shows details about each control node. It shows the type. So the title field is a text field. The ID is title. The title is title. The title is what you actually see. Then down there, the country node is a selection. And down here, you'll see the selections which are defined. And this is pretty helpful because sometimes the IDs are different to what you show to the operator. And this way, using this model view, you can copy and paste the IDs as needed. Okay, so that's pretty good. So now the next thing what we want to do and what we add is the callback, because we want something happening when users change the country selection. So I'll just place my icon down here and I'll add the payload change listener. Click the beautify button. And there we go. So it looks a lot nicer. Again, I just remove the comments, and then I've pasted in the library function. So the payload changed listener, it's always called when something on the payload within the control nodes changes. So this if statement, what this does, it ensures that this payload changed function is only called when the payload of this particular composition changes. Sometimes you have nested compositions, sub-compositions, sub-compositions, and so forth. And each of them can have their own composition script and manage the changes in the payload themselves. And with that if statement, you ensure that only changes of this particular composition control nodes gets processed within the function we define. And the first function we define is just we say console.log, and we say and we log the payload. So now, of course, I need to open the browser console. And what I'll do is I'll just edit here, so we can see it next to each other. So when I select England, I should see England. When I select Brazil, I should see Brazil. I didn't save it. That's well, that's let's say a mistake that can happen. So I modified the script but didn't save it, and then of course the Chrome debugger doesn't load the latest script. You have to save it, and you'll see the notification here. As long as there is a dot, the script is not saved. When I click the save button, you get the check mark. Now it's saved. And now when I change the selection, then we'll get the update printed down here, and we'll see the control nodes. Countries: Argentina is Brazil, is Argentina again. So our callback and our basic script is working. So let's remove that. We don't need that anymore. Okay, what we want is we want now a function that updates all widgets based on the selection in the selection box. And I call this function update composition, because that's what it does. And as an argument, what we'll pass to that function is the country which is selected by the user. And that's the payload. We printed the payload previously, and we'll just take the country control node, which is actually this one. Okay, now let's define the function. Const update composition, it's a function. There are various ways to define it. And country ID. Okay, finally I managed it. Okay, so now we want to start, for example, updating the text. How do we do that? Well, let's go back to the documentation, and let's have a look at the set text widget properties, which are here. So that's the set payload. And where do I have an example? Here is an example. So here in this example, we get the reference to the text widget, and we'll set it down there. So which is actually quite easy. With setting the payload, it gets the it takes a JSON structure and we set the text property of the widget. There are some other properties, which I'll show you in a second, that you can modify within this call. First, let's start easy with this one, the text property, and our widget is called a widget. We set the text property, and which one do we want to set? We set that one from our country lookup table. Take the country ID. So then we're basically down here. And now what we'll take is we'll take the text.
Perfect.
Okay. And what we've done now here with this single one, I'll save it. And we test it right away. So when I select England, it says hello from England, hello from Argentina, hello Brazil, and so forth. Perfect. So now let's add the others, and what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste them from a script which I prepared before. Just see, I forgot to add these semicolons at the end. They're actually not required anymore. So the JavaScript engine of the browser will automatically add that. So what do we have here? We have here the image widget, and we set the image property. So then we have the text, set the text. We have the header. We want to set the color of the header. The drop line, which is down there. So we set the short name, which is this one. And the Asian color will set the filled gradient with the background color. So how do you find all these property names? That's actually pretty easy. Just go to the Widget Explorer, and the Widget Explorer shows all the widgets that are used within that composition. And then you just can click here and see all the properties that you can send directly and modify directly from the composition script. So the text widget has a text property, which is there. And then there is another one. There's the color property, which we use for the header text. The rectangle, it has the fill gradient. The image, it has, of course, the image property. And then you can flip X, Y, or set the object fill and the shift of the image.
So that's what's in yellow, right? Within the script, that's the actual property that we're adjusting. The image, text, color, text, fill gradient. I was just saying it's the yellow text inside of that script.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now when I change this, we already get our lookup table working.
And so what we did with this lower is we showed one element that you can still modify manually, just so you can see it. So you can see that header information color is being switched, as Thomas mentioned, in that line that says color, country lookup table ID, text color. But you can still manually switch the actual text because no data is being sent to the text itself. So if you want to, can you go in and manually change that just so we can see what So you could, in theory, though, instead of setting that manually, that text, you could send the text as well. But oftentimes graphics, we do have stuff that we want to remain manual, depending on what you're doing. So
there's one more thing which I'd like to show, in particular with the text widget. Let me open this here and open this the lower script. So then what I'll do is I'll just add a stop point here. So, and when I saved the script so that it executes the init function, and now it stops here at that point.
Mhm.
And this allows me to use the browser control for debugging. So for example, when I want to see more about the text widget object, so I'll get all the functions that are available to manipulate, to get information from the text widget, or to set information, set details of the text widget. There is one which we used. It's the, where is it? There is it, the set payload. We use that one. And there is the opponent function. It's the get payload. And that's what we're gonna just use now. It's the get payload. There we go. And with the get payload, you'll get all the properties of the text widget. Here in particular, it's the text widget, what you can set, what you can modify. And you can set the payload. We text dot set payload. It's this one. Okay, then we can set the text property, which I just hello from console, use this text, and then we can set the color. What do we use? Let's say light blue. And when I set this, I'll get a syntax error. Okay. Looks like that we forgot to close this color. There we go. So now we have modified two properties at the same time. And when I now use the get payload, where is it? There is the get payload. What I'll see here is the text, which is changed hello from console. And also the color now is changed to light blue. And I can use the same here within the composition script. And now it's light blue here. And what I do is I just copy this one here to the text payload up there. So now the first, the title line and this line will receive the same colors, and I'll send two properties at the same time. I'll change to England. Now
nice.
The red, we have the yellow, we have the dark blue. It doesn't look that nice anymore here. But you'll get the idea of how to minimize and optimize then calls if you want to set multiple properties of widgets at the same time.
Great. And we did have a question, Thomas, if you want to take a look at that from Bryce. I think it's what we're really working with here is a static lookup table. So it's something that you kind of set and forget. And, it makes sense in the context of country flags and, things that just don't really change. But this question from Bryce.
Yeah. Does the JSON data have to be static, or can it be dynamic and linked to an API? Yes, absolutely. We have examples and projects where lookup tables dynamically generated from APIs like live soccer data, live sports data, and then you select your the team ID or the team name from the selection box, and based on your selection of the team, the latest details, lineups will be shown, or match stats of this particular team will then be presented from a lookup table loaded from an external API.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to Catherine's point, the data that's prepared, this is all, I'll call it, all the data is contained within the Google script. So the example that Thomas is showing wouldn't be something that you were necessarily dynamically changing. You would maybe, you knew the name of your roster of athletes, for example, and you sort of quote unquote burn it into the script. Yeah, obviously you can go into the script and change it, save, refresh your application, your app, your studio app. Another approach, if you need a database, for example, like a Google Sheet, that would take you into, and I believe we did a demo on that too. There should be a video on our, about using a Google Sheet to dynamically change, lists of properties. And I think one piece to hammer home is, that's really important to understand. All widgets have properties, right? And in this example, Thomas has been sending, he's isolating or sending data from the script to specific properties of 2 different widgets, actually 3. The rectangle widget, the text widget, and the image widget. So the text widget has a property called text. So sometimes that's a little confusing. You're basically using the script to send the data to a specific property of a specific widget, as opposed to a control node where you're more visually doing it. You're just making a direct correlation between a control node to a property of a widget, no script involved. So this is definitely more advanced, but super powerful. And I think Thomas did a really good job of breaking down the script into its into a logical organizational structure in the script, so you can understand how it's built from the ground up. So if you're interested in learning JavaScripting as it pertains to singular composition, this is a great one. It is really, really pretty straightforward to understand, I think.
And maybe before you dive into that, Thomas, if we could just show that script, the lookup table comp inside of a control app, just so everyone can see.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can imagine what it looks like, but just as a refresher, whenever you do scripting, it's not going to render inside of Composer. It's only going to render in the script editor in the output.
A brilliant keyword, because I almost forget about that. So, but what will happen now is we hopefully will break it. So we have Argentina. Okay, we'll see Argentina updating here. That's perfect. Then we'll go to Brazil. We see Brazil here. Let's go back to Argentina. That's easier to read. And we copy and paste the output URL. And what do we see here? That's a little different.
That's interesting.
Why is that? Where is my? There is my composition. There we go. So that's really, really interesting. So now when I change to Brazil, I'll see Brazil. It's great. So now I have
I think it was a default. Okay. I think it was a default state, Thomas, because if you reload the control app, the default goes back to what you see in the output on the right frame.
So what we see here is the effect when you don't take care of the initialization.
Yep.
Because when you refresh the output URL, it always loads, as Catherine said, the default what's within the composition. So now what we need to do to ensure that we'll see the proper data that we want in the initialization is call exactly the same function, or it's not always the same function. It depends on the requirements and then the logic which is used. But in our case, it's a very simple logic, and we'll use exactly the same function to update the composition on the initialization as we use it when we change the content here. So now what we do is we'll just refresh our Uno app. And
you're refreshing that connection to the composition, just as a reminder, not refreshing the browser window.
Yes, you're right. Refreshing the composition within the Uno app. Now what we see is when I change the selection, everything works fine. And when I refresh the browser window, we'll see the right content there as well.
Perfect.
Very cool.
Okay, now let me show this example, which I previously downloaded from the, where is it? There is it, from the template library. And it's a crypto example. And this also addresses the question regarding the selection box. The selection box, what you basically have here and add here, this unfortunately is static. You cannot dynamically set that or modify these control nodes through the API in the composition. So in this case, what we defined is a selection box with well, a subset of bitcoins, and then based on the bitcoins, you select the composition script, goes to the API, reads the latest data and updates then the text widget, colors, and the arrow, which shows the latest change.
So basically, you kind of have to know ahead of time what you're going to want to select, because those selection options have to be pre-prepared.
Yeah.
And like Thomas said, they can't dynamically change. But they could be generic definitions. I mean, they could just be 1, 2, 3 if you want to change, you know, what you're sending to those.
If you're
items.
and going back to Bryce's question, if your list of athletes with their various properties, age, height, weight, for example, as you denoted in the note in the chat, that could also be done with a Google Sheet, right? Using our Google playlist. And there's an example in the template library, a Google playlist, where you generate a Google playlist. The Google Sheet is your database. You put the names of the athletes, the weight, and then you'll have generate a list inside of the Uno app. That would be another way to, it's not a question of one being better than the other. It just depends on what you want to do. So if your list is dynamically changing, I would say a Google playlist would probably be a way to go. But what
I'll
Thomas
find the
has
template
shown,
that you're referencing.
yeah, and I think what Thomas has shown again, that's the power of Singular as a platform. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to sort of get to where you want to go. It's just what Thomas has shown is really getting into JavaScripting, where you have at the end of the day the most flexibility, but you have more complexity. So and he's covered multiple properties of multiple widgets, which is really helpful so that you understand how to address them. He's making references to the composition tree, the specific names within the tree. He used that little WI, lowercase wi, to denote it as a widget, and then the name of the widget. Sometimes you might see examples from us where he might do like GR for short for group. That's where that WI was referenced in the script. So super deep dive into the script, JavaScript editing. But when you add JavaScripting, as you can see, it's really powerful. We use this across projects constantly. This method, the Google Sheet method, depending on the project. Hopefully that helps Bryce with his question.
Yeah, probably can show one thing.
Yeah, and then we can wrap it up because we're getting up.
Yeah, regarding generic drop downs. Well, this is from an example or actually from a project that we've built, and it takes real data from a soccer database, and we have various graphics. One of the graphics allows to display split screens in a lot of for a lot of days, and there are matches which are dynamic, and because those selection boxes there are static, and we know there are 9 matches there each day, so you can select the match, and then based on the day, on the match day which is selected here, the content will update to that particular match. To make that a little bit easier for an operator to know which match is which, so we have there a data viewer which only is available in the preview or in the app, so you don't see that on the output URL, where you see, okay, which team is playing where, and then you select, they select the particular match. And then down here, so the first one is BVB to Heidenheim. There we go. There is Dortmund Heidenheim, and that's an easy way then to, let's say, a kind of a helper for the operator to select the proper combination of that. Okay, but now back to you.
I think we've covered. Let me see how we're doing on time. We're kind of getting short on time here because I know Thomas has a hard out. But we appreciate the questions and the feedback, and use the support channel as well in Singular to send us more questions. We really appreciate the feedback. It helps tackle some of these more complicated tasks. So I think we covered pretty much everything, unless you guys have anything. Thomas, great job, really thorough, very thorough, especially on the JavaScript portion in terms of breaking the script down into logical pieces.
Yeah, and I don't think that was too complicated. It is if you want to try and build the script from scratch, of course, but as I keep mentioning, that template is pre-built, so everything that Thomas kind of landed on at the end is what's available in the composition script within that template. So feel free to download it, and you guys are going to get a replay email from us, and we'll make sure to have all the links that we've referenced today inside of that email, so you'll know what you're doing. And I guess that's it, unless anyone else has any more questions. Thanks Bryce, for your questions.
Yeah,
good
appreciate
question.
it. I think I'm good.
I guess we're good.
Yeah, Thomas, thanks again. Really appreciate your time, and I hope everyone got some good, useful information out of this one. And again, another little bit more than a little bit deep dive. We're really thorough look at JavaScripting with tables and setting multiple selection properties. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll be back again soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.